10 years ago, lawmakers in California would work bipartisanly to pass bills, but California's policies have seen a dramatic shift within the decade. Melissa Melendez, a former Republican state senator, sat down with California insider Siamak Karami to talk about why the state legislature keeps passing laws that don't work.
I was in the legislature for 10 years, and I saw a dramatic shift from the time I started until the time I left, which was just this past November when I retired. In the beginning, legislators from both parties worked together. I mean, we had our differences, no doubt about that, but we worked together. There were many times when we were, co-authoring one another's bills. I certainly had Democrats on some of my bills and vice versa, and if we found an issue that we agreed on, we were able to work together.
But Melendez says lawmakers are now passing bills based on political agendas and cutting the public out.
Every time you think, well, they're done with the really outrageous bills, another one comes along and it gets passed and it gets through. But the average Californian, they don't care. They're not paying attention to that. And now they're boxed into a corner because now they can't quite get out of it. Because if they change how they're dealing with these issues, they have to admit that they were wrong.
According to Melendez, bills are passed to fit into the ideology that politicians are pushing forward as opposed to actually solving the state's issues.
We have had this conversation so many times on the floor of the Senate and also when I was in the Assembly. And we would stand up and say, here's what's going to happen. Here are the consequences if you pass this bill. And it's always dismissed out of hand. They don't care. I don't know if it's because they don't believe it, if they think we're being hyperbolic when we're saying these things are going to happen. I really don't know. I just know that their number one goal is to get that bill passed. And oftentimes I should say, the more pushback there is from the right, the more they want to get that bill passed because now they have something to prove.
She says that California politicians see getting bills passed as a way to build their resume without any repercussions. But oftentimes, everyday residents are those who face the consequences.
They will get bills passed, they will go out into their communities, they will hold a press conference, they will beat their chest and say, look how great I am, look what I did for all of California. But later on, that bill will get challenged in court, and we've seen that many, many times just in my short time there. That bill gets challenged in court, it gets tossed out, but guess what? The legislator that ran that bill, they're gone. They're not in office anymore because of term limits. So they suffer no consequences. They don't have to answer for it, and frankly, nobody really remembers their name.
Melendez says that the impact of some of these laws being passed have resulted in rising crime, high living costs, education quality decline, homelessness, and ultimately people leaving. Data from the U.S. Census Bureau shows that more than 700,000 Californians relocated out of the state within the last 2 years, which ultimately led to California losing a congressional seat.
I mean, that many people were fed up with California that they said, I'm out of here. I'm going to Florida or Tennessee or Kentucky or Utah or Minnesota. You would leave the beautiful weather, the beautiful topography, the oceans, the mountains, everything we have to offer in California. People were willing to leave that behind for a place that offers none of those things, but offered some freedom and offered them the opportunity to keep some extra money in their pocket and not soak them every time they went to fill up their gas tank or register their car or pay their taxes.
She urges Californians to rethink how they are voting and to understand that many of the state's issues are coming from bad policies.
What it's going to take is for California voters to change how they're voting. I mean, it is the people's government, and the only way the people's government changes how they do business is if the people make them do that. No law, that we pass is going to change how people vote, and that's what's going to happen is where Californians get to the point where they say, I just can't do this anymore. I can't take this anymore. I've got to change my way of thinking. That's what it's going to take.
Melendez says that a politician's job is to listen to their constituents. She says the first step should be putting the public first and letting people express their opinions and needs and finding solutions to fix the issues that the state is facing.